Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and this is the all-new KGM Torres EVX. Now last year, Sang Yong was in a bit of a financial pickle but had a majority of its shares bought out by KG Global. And in 2024, Sang Yong was rebranded as KGM. Now the Torres is the first all-new model to arrive since that rebranding, and in terms of size, it sits between the Corando SUV and the larger 7-seater Rexton SUV. But the thing with the Torres, like the Corando, is that it is available as either a full ICE car or, in the case of the EVX, well, a full EV. Now, if you want to watch my review of the full ICE version of the Torres, just click up there in the top right-hand corner. But I want to say a big thank you to KGM UK because they've actually allowed me to review the Torres, both ICE and EV versions, back to back. And having lived with the EVX for a week, I'm going to answer a couple of big questions. Firstly, what's it like? Secondly, how does it compare to the ICE version of the Torres, because I had that car last week? And thirdly, because of the way the Torres EVX is priced, it sits in a highly competitive electric vehicle segment. So, does the Torres have a few tricks up its sleeve to make it stand out? Well, stick with me to find out. Now, when it comes to the EVX's design, in terms of body shape, it is basically identical to the ICE version of the Torres. It has that very boxy kind of SUV look to it. But whereas the ICE version looks very rugged and kind of ready to go off-road, the EV version, I think, looks very futuristic and actually just screams that it's an EV. I mean, look at those 20-inch alloy wheels. They've got a classic aero blade design to them, and they're very easy to clean as well. And I actually kind of prefer the look of the EVX over the ICE version. Now, this still pays homage to the SUVs of yesteryear. We've got these little panels here on the bonnet. However, I wouldn't recommend tying anything down on these because they do creak when you give them a bit of a pull. And then on the back of the Torres, we've got that offset hump and handle, just like the SUVs of yesteryear, where you would have a spare wheel in there. Again, I'm just gutted that they are aesthetic only and you can't really use it as like a cute little cubby space. So that's a little bit disappointing. But with the EVX, this is why I prefer it in terms of style-wise to the ICE version. We've got this very unique daytime running light which goes across the front of the car. It also does a little dance and a little jingle for you when you lock and unlock the car as well. That's something I really do like. It's not just a jingle on the inside of the car, you get one on the outside. But instead of just paying homage to the SUVs of yesteryear, this also actually has a couple of Easter eggs that pays homage to Korea. So we've got this cute little kind of design feature here on the front, on the charging flap, and also on the tail light design. And they represent earth and fire on the Korean flag. I actually think that's really cool, and yeah, I do like the fact that it's kind of paying homage then to Korea as well as those classic SUVs. And the other thing as well I will mention is in regards to the colours of the EVX. They're exactly the same as the ICE version of the Torres. You've got your greys, your blacks, your whites. You can even get a blue or a green. But the one colour I think this car would look amazing in, just like the ICE version, is like a deep metallic cherry red. But unfortunately, it's not something that you can get. But let me know what you think of the EVX's styling in the comments section below. Do you prefer it to the ICE version, or do you think that's the better looking car? But yeah, I actually think it's a very striking car. This has definitely been turning heads, and yeah, I just think it's a great step in the right direction for the Korean brand. And on that note, I think it's time we leave the exterior of the EVX and we have a little look at the inside. Sat in the front of the EVX, you are greeted by a very comfortable, really nicely designed and very minimalistic interior. It is pretty much identical to the ICE version of the Torres, the main differences being that I've got an EVX badge on the dash, the flappy paddles, instead of changing gear, adjust my brake regeneration, and I've got a couple of buttons here to move the front passenger seat. But apart from that, it is identical. And just like the ICE version, I get very strong Kia EV6 vibes in here in terms of its design, and that's no bad thing. And when it comes to getting in and out of the Torres, it's actually very easy because of that raised seating position. So if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues, then this is one car to look at. But I will mention you haven't got a grab handle for the driver's side, but you have for the front passenger side. And then once you're sat in these seats, you find that they are very comfortable. It is real leather as well, and it does hold a big bear like me in place. Now I have got electrically adjustable seats as well as electrically adjustable lumbar support, which is a bonus. But with the front passenger, it's just electric adjustment only. And then you've got the steering wheel, which have both rake and reach adjustment. It is a bit stiff because this car is brand new. I think I'm actually the first journalist to get it. But in regards to the driver seating, there's plenty of adjustment and you can easily find the right driving position for you. Also, when it comes to build quality, it's actually very good in here. Again, we've got the soft touch plastics on top of the dash and the doors here. I love the contrasting copper stitching and the copper inserts here on the dashboard and center console. Also, this center console as well that is floating, it actually feels very sturdy. Yes, there's a little bit of a wiggle, but that's not going anywhere. We've also got this kind of faux carbon fiber trim here on the dash, and we've got some interior lighting as well, just a bit of a mood when you're driving at night. And just, yeah, the general quality in here is a massive improvement for KGM, or what was Sang Yong. Cubby spaces in the EVX are also a huge positive. I've got massive door bins where I could easily get 2 large bottles of drink in there, possibly even 3, but there's just a huge amount of space there that's provided. Now granted, it's not lined with any fabric or rubber, so loose items will rattle around a bit, but that's easily forgiven. Now on the top of the floating center console, we've got up front a little tray area with a hole in the center, so you can actually put your charging cable through there and plug it into your phone. That I think is actually really cool. Just behind there we got 2 cup holders. Again, they are rubber lined with a couple of plastic grippers. They have a couple of kind of different levels to them, so if you have a short cup, definitely put it up front. If you have a taller cup, put it just a little bit behind. We then got a little cubby space here for your wireless charging. You get that on the K40 trim level, which is actually really unique and handy in the way it's provided. And then underneath the armrest, we have got a good amount of space there. It is lined with fabric and it is very decent as well. Now underneath the floating center console, we've got a little rubberized tray area as well, and I do, again, like the ICE version, love the fact we've got this pattern here which matches the copper here on the dashboard. I do like that feature. We then just up front have a little tray area as well where you could possibly rest your phone or perhaps your keys or something. Just below there we've got 2 USB-C charging inputs and a 12-volt socket. You have got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, wired only, I will mention. But I do love the fact that all the little tray areas here and cubby areas are rubber lined. And then finally we've got the glove box, which is of an okay shape and size. The boot pack and locking wheel nut are underneath the boot floor, so you get to use all of that glove box space, but again, not lined with any fabric or rubber, so loose items will rattle around in there. So when it comes to cubby spaces here in the EVX, just like the ICE version, they are hugely impressive. Those are massive door pockets for this type of car. You'd probably expect them in something like a, I don't know, a Ford Transit or something where you're just going to chuck loads of stuff in there. So that is a huge perk sat in the front of the EVX. Now regarding the EVX's minimalistic interior, that's down to the physical buttons, because there aren't that many in here. We have got on the center console a rocker switch for the gear select and a couple of buttons for the parking and e-brake. It is actually a drive-by-wire system in the car. On the dashboard we have got your hazard lights as well as your start-stop button for the car. On the steering wheel on the left-hand side we have got your media, communication and voice controls, and on the right-hand side we've got your driver data menu controls as well as your radar guided cruise control. controls. And then on the right hand side, we've got your buttons for your windows and adjusting the mirrors. And that's pretty much it. Everything else is controlled via the main infotainment system. So regarding that and the driver data display, they are both 12.3-inch displays. Now with the infotainment system, it's actually a very good system. It does work, it's very responsive. The actual menus are very clear to use. Some of the icons can get a little bit small and fiddly to use, especially whilst you're driving. So what I recommend is using this kind of copper panel on the dashboard to rest your hand and kind of go through the menus, or rest your hand on top and use your thumb. One thing I do like is when you're driving along and you've got the main infotainment system working, there is a drop down from the top where you can adjust things like the drive modes or go through a couple of other menus. And on the right hand side, you can kind of scroll it across to get the dual zone climate control, kind of like what we've seen with Kia with the EV9. It is a very cool little system kind of tucked in the corner. That's actually very handy to put your hand on top and just use your thumb to access it, but you can also swipe up and down to go through various other menus. As I mentioned, you've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They are wired only, there's no wireless just yet, which is a shame because I'd love to be able to put my phone in the wireless charging pad whilst using Apple CarPlay. But the system itself, like I said, it actually works. It's very responsive. When it comes to its internal maps, they are a TomTom based system. And yeah, I mean, I would say spend a bit of time going through the menus because this car has a lot of creature comforts and safety systems in place, and it can take a bit of time to kind of access them all and go through all those individual systems. But when you're driving along, the main thing you're probably going to want to do is just adjust the temperature or the fan strength, and you can do that from either the right hand side or go to a dedicated button on the left hand side. Now, it's not perfect. One thing I'm a little bit disappointed with is that a lot of the shortcut buttons, especially for Apple CarPlay and the main infotainment system, are on the left-hand side. So you've got to kind of reach a bit in order to kind of access them. I was going to say reach a bit to reach them there. But it's a minor niggle because the system works. It's responsive, it's clear, it's fast, and I am genuinely impressed by it. And then finally, we've got the digital dashboard display. It is a new display from KGM, something different that we've seen from Sang Yong. What you have is this kind of vista where you've got like a scenic view in the background. That does change depending on what time of day it is. Of course, if you don't like it, you can get rid of it. But the menu systems are nice and clearly presented. They are pretty much easy to read when on the move. I will say some of the icons do get a little bit small. So yeah, sat here in the front of the EVX, just like the ICE version. It's comfortable. I love the design. The cubby spaces are really impressive. The infotainment system is very impressive as well. And this is just a massive step up for the Korean brand. I am definitely impressed by it. And on that note, I think it's time we leave the front of the Torres EVX's interior and we see what it's like for those rear passengers. Sat in the back of the EVX, this is definitely one of the highlights to the car. It's just very spacious and comfortable back here and not devoid of features. Now, just like the front, getting in and out of the back of the Torres is nice and easy because the doors open pretty wide. I will say there is a little drop in quality when you sit back here, but the only thing I'd say is just watch out because there's a bit of a plastic hump on the side here which you might catch yourself on. So that's just something to be aware of. But that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide. And just look at the knee room I've got there. I can stretch my feet underneath the driver's seat as well. And that headroom is just massively impressive. You can easily get a couple of 6-footers sat in the back of the EVX and they will feel nice and comfortable back here. I think getting 3 adults in the back of the EVX would be a bit of a push, but you could definitely get 2 grown adults back here or 3 kids. Now, speaking of kids, we have got ISOFIX supports on the outer seats. There's no plastic covers on them. You just got to navigate between the leather of the seats there, so it should be pretty easy to affix a child seat. Just a little bit disappointing that the front passenger seat doesn't come with ISOFIX support. Now, when it comes to cubby spaces, just like the front, it is impressive back here as well. I mean, the door pockets, again, are just massive. You could get one, possibly two large bottles of drink in there, plus room for extra items. We have got your aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats. We've even got a little pouch here as well, where you could perhaps put your mobile device whilst it's charging. We have got a centre armrest that comes down and unveils two cup holders as well, and they are a decent size and depth. I will mention it is a 60-40 split to the seats, so there's no through loading into the boot area. And then when it comes to features, we have got a couple of little vents here. Just below there, we've got two USB-C charging inputs. And what I like as well is that we've got two little tray cubby areas that are rubber lined, just like the ICE version. And again, there's like a nice kind of air quality with those little rubberized tray areas. They are very handy. I've also got heated seats on the outer seats on this K40 trim. And also on a sunny day like today, it's nice and handy that I have got, oh, let's see if I can get that on there. There we go. We have got a nice blind there, so the kids back here can be shaded from the sun. What I'll also mention as well is that these windows are absolutely massive, really nice and square, allow a lot of light in, and they do open all the way down. But it's not perfect because it does feel quite dark back here because of that dark roof lining. So if you are 6 foot tall and you're kind of sat up high, it might feel a little bit dark and a bit claustrophobic back here. Just like the ICE version of the Torres, this car desperately needs a sunroof. Even if it's just a glass panel and it doesn't open, at least you got more light coming in. And then finally, it's a bit disappointing that we can't adjust the bench seat. It doesn't slide forward or back, but the seats do recline a little bit, but it's not really enough to kind of show off about. It's just a couple of inches of movement there. So being sat here in the back of the Torres is a real highlight. It is definitely one of the car's strengths. Also, we've got these little kind of hooks here on the back. I think that's for kind of putting a jacket over, so it allows it to dangle down. But again, that's very handy. So yeah, being sat here in the back of the EVX is just one of the highlights to this car. It's very spacious, comfortable, not devoid of features, and being an electric car as well, when you're driving along, it should be quiet and comfortable as well. So yeah, a definite highlight. And on that note, I think it's time we leave the rear seats and we see what the boot is like. Now, with the ICE version of the Torres, you actually had a class-leading 703 litres of space, which is just massive in this segment. However, with the EVX, you get a little bit more. You actually get 839 litres of boot space, and that comes in the way of underfloor storage. And when you get the boot open, it is just presented with a massive wide square load area. You can easily get a couple of large suitcases in there or plenty of weekend bags. There's no boot lip to navigate over, although I will say the boot lip itself is a little bit high, so it could make it difficult for dogs to jump in and out of, or loading items such as a wheelchair or mobility scooter. Now, it's not devoid of features either. We have got a 12-volt socket, surprisingly no tethering hooks. We've got a couple of cubby spaces on each side with a bit of elastic banding to hold items in place. We've got your little warning triangle there as well. As I mentioned, we've got plenty of underfloor storage, and also if you do put the seats down, you don't get a completely flat load area, but you can put the tonneau cover underneath the boot floor, so you don't need to leave it at home if you need to carry any large bulky items. We've also got an interior light that you can turn on and off, and also KGM do kind of advertise the EVX as a bit of a lifestyle car that you could possibly sleep in. So you can open the boot from the inside as well. That's pretty quirky. As you can see, we've also got a tow bar fitted to this particular car, and we can tow 1,500 kilos. We've also got the convenience feature, so if you have got your arms full, you just stand by the back of the EVX and the boot will open after approximately 5 seconds. I do really love that feature. But there is also another feature I love as well, and that's the fact that when you get the boot closed and you walk away, the car will automatically lock. So on that note, shall we get the boot closed and see what the Torres EVX is like on the open road? So once you get going in the EVX, first impressions are very positive. It's a nice, quiet and comfortable car to drive. Now, because this is a mid-sized SUV and you've got that raised seating position, visibility, just like the ICE version, I'm going to say is okay. It's pretty good. Now, because of that raised driving position, I got a brilliant view of the road ahead. The A-pillars are a little bit thick and chunky, but I've not had any issues looking around them at any junctions. The wing mirrors are of a lovely size and shape, and I have got blind spot monitoring as well. But just like the ICE version of the Torres, when I look over my shoulder, because of that C-pillar design and blade effect on the exterior of the car, it does create a bit of a blind spot. So I'm thankful that I've got blind spot monitoring on this K40 trim. And then rear visibility is just the same. It is pretty good because we've got that kind of faux spare wheel lump on the back of the tailgate. It does mean that there is a little bit of an intrusion in regards to rear visibility, but there's no intrusion from the rear headrests, so that is a bonus. So yeah, all-round visibility is pretty good, but it could be better, and some rivals in this segment have got better visibility. But compared to the ICE version of the Torres, this does feel a lot more refined, and it just feels like a nice, quieter place to be. So yeah, first impressions of the EVX are positive. Now, there are just two trim levels to choose from in the EVX range. There's the K30 and the K40, which is what I've got here. Now, unlike the ICE version of the Torres, you can only get the EVX as front-wheel drive. There's no all-wheel drive version currently available. So when it comes to my pick of the range, go for the K40, get all the bells and whistles, because you get lovely creature comforts like ventilated seats, you get the full proper leather as well, but you also get some extras when it comes to safety, things like blind spot monitoring, reverse cross traffic alert, and a couple more as well. So that would be my pick of the range. But just like the ICE version of the Torres, I do ask the question if we could possibly get a couple of alloy wheel choices for the K40, because I've got some very good looking 20-inch alloy wheels. If you go for the K30, they drop down to 18s, and there's a part of me thinking if you could get the option of 18-inch alloy wheels, if they could improve the ride somewhat. So that's just something I'd like to see offered from KGM, just the choice to say, do I want the 20s or do I want the 18s? Maybe even do the same design as the 20s, but just make them 18 inches, because I think that could improve the ride quality in the EVX. Now, it is better than the ICE version, but as we'll get onto it in a little bit, yes, there are still some little bumps in that come through into the cabin. But in regards to trim level, definitely without any hesitation, go for the K40. Now, when it comes to powering the EVX, it's really lovely and simple. There is one battery available, and as I mentioned earlier, it is supplied by BYD. Now, it is a 73.4 kilowatt hour battery producing 204 brake horsepower and 339 newton meters of torque, which means with the power going to the front wheels, this 2.4 ton family electric SUV will hit 62 miles an hour in 8.1 seconds. And that is pretty impressive and much quicker than the ICE version of the Torres. And it actually feels just right for the car. It doesn't feel underpowered, and unlike some electric SUVs, it doesn't feel overpowered. It doesn't need that massive performance. Now, when it comes to range, KGM claim that I should be able to get around 287 miles of range, and I do believe them. Now, at the moment, I've not yet charged the EVX to a full 100%. I've gotten it to around 80-81, and it was showing me about 236 miles of claimed range. So doing the calculations, it does work out that I should be able to get those 287 miles. Obviously, whether or not you can actually do that with a full charge comes down to your driving style. But in regards to the power and performance, like I said, this feels just right. And even in comfort mode, if I put my foot down, there's a nice burst of acceleration. If you got it in sport mode, yes, of course, it is a bit more responsive, but it's not a sporty car. This is definitely one to be comfortable and get you from A to B in as comfortable way as possible. So yeah, when it comes to the battery and the performance of the EVX, I am very impressed by it. Now, when it comes to charging and brake regeneration in the EVX, I am actually very impressed by it, particularly with the brake regeneration. So as I said, you've got the flappy paddles on the back of the steering wheel, and just like a Hyundai Group car, you got 3 levels of brake regen. You can essentially kind of go from 0, which is it's all switched off and the car will just keep on coasting, all the way up to 3, which is the maximum in the EVX. There's no what they claim as full one pedal driving, but in the strongest level it is actually pretty good, and I would claim it is strong enough to be classed as one pedal driving. You can press and hold on to the left paddle and it goes to a smart system, so basically the car will decide how much regen needs to be applied. Now I will note though that in its strongest setting it won't come to a complete stop. It kind of gets to about a 2 or 3 mile an hour crawl, and it is enough, like I said, to be classed as one pedal driving. Now when it comes to the charging capabilities of the EVX, if you were to charge this from 0 with a 3-pin socket to 100%, you're looking at around 30 hours. If you're using an 11 kilowatt charger, and again going from 0 to 100%, you're looking at around 9 hours for charging. Now if you go on to the more rapid chargers, for example a 100 kilowatt charger, to go from 20 to 80%, you're looking at around 37 minutes. And with a supercharger, a 350 kilowatt charger, going from 10 to 80% takes around 28 minutes. So that is actually pretty good. It's not on the levels of the Hyundai Group cars, but that is actually pretty respectable, and does mean you just need to kind of go in and get yourself an extra drink when you stop off at the services. But in regards to the charging and the brake regeneration, I am very impressed by it. You should have no issues doing a long drive in the EVX and having to wait ages at the charging station for the car to top up. Now, when it comes to the ride and refinement of the EVX, I'm going to say it's pretty good, especially when compared to the ICE version, because I felt that to be a very unsettled and jittery ride at low speed. You got a lot of booms and vibrations coming into the cabin, especially when you're going over any ruts or potholes. And I think just the fact that this is an EV and it weighs just a smidge over 2.4 tons, with that extra weight it can just deal with those bumps and imperfections in a much more mature manner, so to speak. So when it comes to ride at low speed, this is definitely the nicer car to be in, but it still feels a little bit unsettled. You do get some of those bumps and imperfections, those booms coming into the cabin. You can feel them and you can also hear them. But when you get yourself up to say 60 miles an hour, the car does settle down, but you do get little vibrations coming through, particularly in the steering wheel. So that's just something to be aware of there. But when you compare it to other models in this segment, particularly electric cars, you find that this rides, you know, pretty well, but some of its rivals do ride better at lower speed. But when it comes to just daily driving in the EVX, I've had no issues whatsoever. It is a comfortable car to drive. I have driven this on a relatively long journey and it was a very comfortable cruiser. And then when it comes to things like refinement, again, like the ICE version, I was very impressed by it. The main intrusion into the cabin is actually tyre roar, but on that long journey I had no issues whatsoever. And I haven't got a branded stereo in the KGM, even on this top of the trim level, the K40, but the standard stereo I've got in here has actually done a very good job of just covering that outside noise from the road. Now when it comes to wind noise, there is a little bit that comes off the A pillar, but that's about it. This is a very nice, comfortable cruiser. So yeah, when it comes to the ride and refinement side of the EVX, it is much better than the ICE version of the Torres, but when compared to some of its rivals in this segment, other electric vehicles, it's not quite the class best, but for day-to-day driving you should have no issues whatsoever. Now, what about the EVX's handling? Well, just like the ICE version of the Torres, this is not a sporty car to be in. If you have got the car in sport mode, what it does is it puts a little bit of weight in the steering, but mainly you get a bit more of response under your right foot. Now, I do like the shape and size of the steering wheel. It feels very lovely in my hands, and when I do chuck it into corners, yes, there's a nice bit of assistance there, but it doesn't feel like a video game, and it's definitely not a sporty electric SUV. I don't feel connected to the front wheels like other cars, but for day-to-day driving, you'll have no issues in the Torres whatsoever. Also, when it comes to parking, it is an absolute doddle. I've got 360 cameras as standard on this K40 trim, and they are actually a really good resolution. I do actually like the quality and clarity that's on the screen. That's one thing I really do like. And then as well, you got things like parking sensors front and rear, so that will help you when it comes to parking. But yeah, when it comes to the handling side of the EVX, there is a little bit of roll and lean in the corners. It does feel nice and predictable and composed, but that's where as well the car will want to show its weight. That 2.4 tons wants to try and kind of unveil itself to you. And again, that's why you just want to drive the EVX in a nice, calm and relaxed manner, because yeah, you can get the tyres to make a little bit of a scream if you push it. So I can imagine as well, in the wet, this will want to push wide as well and understeer. So again, it's a nice, it has put a smile on my face, but a different kind of smile to the kind of sportiness from an electric SUV. But for day-to-day driving, if you drive it in a nice relaxed manner, you'll have no issues whatsoever. It's a lovely day-to-day drive for an electric SUV. So what have been some of the highlights and some of the little niggles I've come across whilst living with the EVX this week? Well, highlights have definitely been the looks. This thing looks so futuristic and has really made people take a second glance at the EVX. Now, that's down to two things. Number one, just the general design of the car, because it does look very futuristic. And secondly, the car was officially kind of launched in March, but it's now May, and I think I've pretty much got the only one in Lincolnshire. So as a result, I've got a car that no one's seen before, so everyone's going to give it a second glance. And I've had a few people actually approach me asking me what the car is, because there's no badges at the front and rear. It just says KGM at the back. Only on the steering wheel and on the center caps do you have this old Sang Yong badge on there. Also, all the practicality, the boot space, the rear passenger space. I've had 4 adults in the car at the same time, and everyone was really happy with the space provided. Well, and actually one of my friends is over 6 foot tall, and he was really impressed, but he does agree with me. There needs to be a sunroof. There needs to be something in here to allow some more light in from above. Secondly, I really do love all the safety systems in the car as standard. Another reason to go for the K40 trim. However, as you have heard, as I've been driving about, there is a warning that will go off when you go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, just like a Hyundai Group or Honda car. But weirdly, I didn't have that in the ICE version of the Torres. And that's down to one thing, which is another highlight. You can turn off the safety systems and they stay off. That's something I'm really impressed with in the Torres. However, one of the safety systems I do want to turn off is the traffic sign recognition. I'm on a road now that I know for a fact is a national speed limit road, and it's telling me it's 30 miles an hour. It's not. It's national speed limit, and it is quite slow to respond, but I can turn that system off if I want to. In terms of kind of other little niggles, the only other one I've come across is because we've got like a drive-by-wire system with the gear select, it has on a couple of occasions kind of been a bit funny with me whilst I've been stationary, and then when I've put it into drive to set off, it stays in neutral. and I don't know the reason why. It just, you know, I kind of do everything properly. I put my foot on the brake, adjust it, and it says no. It's just not playing ball with me. So what I've actually had to do on a couple of occasions is turn the car off, wait a minute, start it back up, and then making sure that it is on park on the gear select. Then I can select drive and then set off. So that's probably just a little tiny minor software update needed, but it's just something that I have come across. Anything that I've come across like once or twice, I will let you guys know about. And that's actually pretty much it. It's really been a very good all-rounder, the EVX, and I think it's now time we move on to the conclusion. So, what are my thoughts on the KGM Torres EVX? Well, I said I had 3 questions to answer at the beginning of this review. So, what's the EVX like as an electric vehicle? I'm very impressed by it. Now, it's not perfect. There are some flaws in there. It feels a little bit, I'm going to say rough around the edges, but because of that practicality, this is definitely one car that I think should be on your list. Even if you're looking at other manufacturers, have a drive of the EVX. Just see what it's like, see how you feel about it. Now, when compared to the ICE version of the Torres, without any hesitation, this is a much better car. Particularly, I think, because of the extra weight. It rides better, drives better, and just feels a bit more solid as a result. So that's one thing I would say definitely when compared to the ICE version. Now, when compared to other cars in this segment, other electric vehicles, as I said, the practicality is just immense, and as a result has to be on your shortlist, especially if you're a family with a couple of young kids that might still be in, say, prams or pushchairs, because that boot's going to be really handy for you, because you could put your prams, your pushchairs in there, plus a week's shopping, and still have room to spare. So that's something I really do like. So, the Torres EVX, I think is a very good electric SUV. There we go. Have you changed? No, not yet. It's a very good electric SUV. If it was my money, I would go for this over the ICE version, and I would be honest, I would seriously consider it. I do love the little quirks. I love the styling quirks, the little kind of paying homage to Korea with a Korean flag and that. I think that's really cool. But yeah, this is a brilliant step in the right direction for KGM, or formerly Sang Yong. I'm so glad that they are now starting to really push forward with these kind of EVs and new design statements. With the ICE version, I still stand by the fact that it needs to be a hybrid. It can't be a full ICE car. And I would say if you're looking at either the ICE version or the EVX, without any hesitation, look at this. This is the one to go for. I love the looks. I love the space. I actually love the interior. It feels really nice, well screwed together, no creaks or rattles, everything's in place. Yeah, the KGM Torres EVX, it's a little bit rough around the edges, but it could be the perfect family SUV, family electric SUV for you. Give it a try. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of the KGM Torres EVX, because I've really been impressed by this car. Now, as always, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. If you've got any questions about the EVX and my time with it, put it down in the comments section below. And yeah, I do recommend looking at the EVX if you're after an electric family SUV, because like I said before, I think this could be a bit of a diamond, a little jewel in a very competitive segment, because I think the practicality could win over particularly those with families and those on Motability, and they need the space and the room for adaptations, for wheelchairs, for mobility scooters, to get in that boot area. But guys, have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. So take care everybody, and bye bye.